The whole idea of designing vehicles for movies, you're helping the director illustrate the story, which has a social and a technological setting. And you have to be aware of that because you don't want to jar the story. It has to be consistent. And that's what I think makes the vehicles and the story of Blade Runner so iconic and durable, because it never violates its own technological format. And you have to essentially illustrate the story just like you do for real life. I have never thought of my designs as being isolated. They're always embedded into a social use environment. I think that's critical.
Hello, Wasteland! Yes, and welcome to today's episode where we are looking at Gaslands UK's Car of the Month competition for September 2020. And what a competition it has been! Carrying on the trend from last month, we have had 50 finished entrants this month. 50! That's only 5 less from last month. Only 5 less. It's insane, and I love it. And I love the work you have all been doing this month. But before we jump into it, can I say a massive thank you to this month's sponsor, Camsel Designs, because they have offered up prizes for first, second and third place of website vouchers to the total of £30, £20 and £10. And considering they have some brand new hyper-tech futuristic weapons in stock now, I think it's pretty easy to see what everyone's going to be spending their winning money on. So thank you again, Camsel Designs, for picking the winners this month and setting the challenge. But with a competition of this size and this scope, I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, James, you're just going to cop out again and do a slideshow. Well, not this month, damn it. If the trend is going to be 50 finished entrants every month, then 50 finished reviews is what you're going to get every month. Oh, yes. So, from the top, everyone who entered, we have Aaron Wilkinson, Alden Tank, Alex Benedict, Andy Horton, Bart Van Schaik, Benjamin Pop, Bill D Cunningham, Bracken Wochtel, Bruce Skakel, Chris John, Dan Krause, Dan Van Duyn, Daniel White, Dylan Murray, Frank Saucy, Gareth Powell, Ian Barham, Jaco Jacobs, Jacob Harris, James Featherston, Jay Conklin, Jean-Christian Matthew, Joe Hicks, Jonathan Baca, Jonathan Horsham, Kilgore MJ, Cororgan, Linus Nilsson, Matrak, Matthew B Gerrard, Matt Andrews, Matt George, Matt Reeves, Matt Wingust, Michael Mersey, Michael Quinn, Mcallen, Paul Barnes, Paul Bowles, Paul Chapman Moss, Paul Costello, Peter Giles, Sig Israel Alpha, Quinn Allen, Ramon Sanjuan, Ricky Williams, Rob Lawrence, Ryan Budd, Sam Wessels, Sebastian Debase, Simon Britton, Steve Dowell, Tobias Hutton, Tony Eric Wallace, Tony Peacock, Wayne Thompson, William Noble, Zach Steiner, and of course Zippy Z Zoom. And the finished 50 for this month, we have Aaron Wilkinson, Alden Tank, Andy Horton, Bart Van Schaik, Benjamin Pop, Bill D Cunningham, Bracken Wochtel, Bruce Skakel, Chris John, Dan Krause, Dylan Murray, Frank Saucy, Gareth Powell, Ian Barham, Jacob Harris, James Featherston, Jay Conklin, Jean-Christian Matthew, Joe Hicks, Jonathan Baca, Jonathan Horsham, Kilgore MJ, Cororgan, Linus Nilsson, Matrak, Matthew B Gerrard, Matt Andrews, Matt George, Matt Reeves, Matt Wingust, Michael Mersey, Mcallen, Nick Woodruff, Paul Barnes, Paul Bowles, Paul Chapman Moss, Paul Costello, Peter Giles, Quinn Allen, Ramon Sanjuan, Ryan Budd, Sebastian Debase, Simon Britton, Steve Dowell, Tobias Hutton, Tony Eric Wallace, Tony Peacock, Wayne Thompson, Zach Steiner, and Zippy Z Zoom. So, man, what a lot of entries this month. It is absolutely insane, and I love it. This is what the Wasteland and this hobby is all about, boys and girls. If it's not modifying toy cars, then I don't know what it is. So let's start off with Aaron Wilkinson's entry. And what can I say? Well, this is rough around the edges. I think you've done a damn good job here, my friend. Now, I've got to say this. As a take on the classic V8 Interceptor, I love all the additions of extra fuel tanks and energy lines, but I think you need to go back and touch up some of those painted yellow areas. The cross on top looks like a bit of it has been smudged off, which is fine, but if you just go back over that central line, I think it would really do the build justice. But overall, a really nice solid entry. I like it. I like your style there, Aaron. Moving on, we have Alden Tank with his super futuristic hover car build based off one of those Iron Man Hot Wheel cars. There's a lot of Tau 40k bits that have been used here to really nice effect. And I agree with you, man. Trying to do a pink to blue paint transition must have been just an uphill struggle. So props to you for doing that. And those energy glows, those really work. I really like that. Although I'd like to see a wash in some of the deeper crevices. It would really help it. And can I just point out, Alden was the only one to figure out that if he puts his car in front of a cyberpunk background, it really nicely blends in. You know, using those synthwave wallpapers, I think they really worked. So well done, Alden. Then we have Andy Horton's entry with the Black Swan. What can I say? This is an absolute beast of a build, made from what looks like a jet fighter, a tank, and a hovercraft. It's one hell of a mixed bag, let's just say that. What kills me is, and I get this with a lot of entries each month, is I just wish that you would put a bit more dirt, a bit more grime into these. Now I know with Cyberpunk it's meant to be a little cleaner, but I always find it really helps tie it in to whatever wasteland, be it a city or the desert. If you just put a little bit of that beige, a little bit of that sandy colour, just in certain like cracks and crevices, and just, yeah, you know what I'm saying. But no, really nicely done. I like the custom Russian lettering on the side. And I've got to say, the little escape car that you built and painted, I mean, you know, it's a stock manufactured job, but it does look really nice, and it is a good use of that Hot Wheels car. So no, really nice, really in keeping with the theme. Then we have Bart Van Shake with his entry Gustar 2.0. The running idea being based off what a colleague at work said, cyberpunk, which means there must be a mohawk on the car, which I've got to say, that is a wonderful idea, and I do love that. This absolutely fits that retro futuristic idea. I think it looks absolutely spot on. Those two front hubcaps I think are really inspired. I really like that, helping to cover up those stock wheels. And the little submerged machine gun there, there's a lot on this that just screams the setting so much, and I think that's great. And you had fun as well photoshopping it too. I mean, that's what it's all about at the end of the day, having fun with the builds that you make. Then we have Benjamin Pop with his Inner City Racer. I love the use of neon paints here to just make this glow under a black light. I think that's super cool. But without any of that, just being a nicely painted car, room ambient light, I think works really well. Like, it's always nice to have these hidden features as though you're going to play a game of Gaslands late at night, you know, out on the streets. But when it comes down to it, a lot of the time these things sit on shelves, and I think regardless of whether you've gone for the neon paint or just, you know, regular normal, I'd say this is a really nicely done car. Like, I love the use of capacitors and bits off a circuit board for the engine. You know, that's really inspired. I do like that. And then that gun turret on top is a really neat little extra bit. For the life of me, I don't know what that's from. I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that's been repurposed into a futuristic gun, which is really cool. Then we have Bill D Cunningham with one of our few hoverbike entries this year. What can I say? This is really out there in terms of design, Because the whole thing with, you see a lot of biker models and you see a lot of, things that are clearly like from an Airfix kit that have been upcycled into something else, like kit bashed. But this is all custom. Like, you could not just go out and buy one of these. He's had to sit down and figure out how this would look and how it would work. And it's super inspired by like animes from the 80s. Like, I think this is really good. I love the little use of recognisable elements, as well as some that are just completely new to me. Like the colour scheme, the way the pilot ties in with the craft. Oh, it just all works together flawlessly. Really nicely done, Bill. Then we have Bracken Wochtel's entry. This absolutely ferocious blue and green beast. I mean, there's a lot of parts here that we've seen, released by like North Star and all that. There's a lot of recognisable parts here, but what I particularly like is that the stock car itself is one of those retro sort of BMWs, which is really quite good. And the custom graphic work is spot on. What I'd say this needs, if I was to improve this in any way, Bracken, it just asks for a wash towards some of the panel lines. Like right now it looks a bit too airtight, like this thing never gets dirty. And in some cases that's the look you're going for, but I feel this being the Wasteland, this being an apocalyptic city that people are racing through, like Night City, I think it just needs that definition in some of the panel lines. Then we have Bruce Skakel with his entry, Scorpus Fat Tail. Don't let it get too close or you'll get Scorpia owned. I mean, what can I say about this? This is a wonderful take on that classic sort of scorpion-looking position where you've got those two big menacing claws at the front, which in this case I do wonder what their purpose could be. Is it that they're designed to take out tyres, or is it that you want them to like knock down pedestrians? Like typically with scorpion claws, you look at it and you go, okay, I can see the function there. With these, it's kind of losing me. So maybe it's more like a taser effect. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see this in action and how you would use it on the table. But the tail on this beast, I think, speaks for itself. This thing is clearly covered in missiles and rocket launchers and just death from every angle. And it's quite a strong take on what is otherwise quite a soft and gentle electric car. But those energy lines you've painted on, the highlights around all the edges, really well done. Really like that, Bruce Skakel. Then there's Chris John with this absolute neon devil of a build. Oh, what can I say? I mean, there's going for something that looks good at the daytime. This is something you want to see at night and only at night. Like, it's so bright and vibrant, and on just like a pitch black background. Oh my goodness, this would just leap out of you. All guns blazing. Like the tails at the back, those enormous wings are just something to be seen, to be believed. Like it really knocks on the head all your typical conventions about making a Gaslands car. This thing is covered in exposed weapons and engines and wiring, and the graphic design, like you can immediately understand it by looking at it. You don't need someone to explain to you what this car is. This is a real mean gang car. There's elements of graffiti and it's in neon as well. So this thing really just jumps out at you. I really like it. I think straight lines can be so hard to get right, and repeated straight lines more so. So that circuit board pattern going across the front windscreen onto the roof, I think, man, it's either going to work or it's not. There's no middle ground, and I think you rode the line really close there, because this works, but it could have gone so poorly. So well done, Chris John. This thing is fantastic to look at, an absolute beast. But man, what a gamble of an entry, and that's what this is all about. Then we have Dan Krause with just an absurd monster truck bike, I guess, but it's not a bike, it's a car. It's a car onto enormous wheels that glow in the dark. Like, it doesn't get much more cyberpunk than having some enormous electric cannon on top, just obliterating things as you crush them underfoot. No, there's a lot of really nice details going on here. I love the little additions of all the little decals because there's just enough room between them that the car gets to breathe, while at the same time really helps it fit into that world. If it wasn't for the fact that you could shine a black light on this and get those wheels to glow, I'm not sure if I would have left them just that clear see-through rubber, because they stand out a bit too much for me. But that said, when you see it under the nightlight, as it were, it does work and it does look super cool and futuristic. So it's a real 50-50 one. I've made in the past what I call Marmite builds, where you either love them or hate them. I feel like this is a bit of a Marmite build for me, because on the one hand I'm like, wow, it's really good, but on the other hand I'm like, oh, but those tyres though. So it's really good. It has a lot going for it, this one. So this is going to be a real contender. Keep your eye on Dan Krause. Then we have Dylan Murray with another flying car using the jetpack turbines from Space Marine Assault Marines, I believe. There's a lot of really solid line work going on in this build, like the highlights and the little sections in the tail light and across the body. Oh my goodness, it's to die for. Like the use of that auto kill pilot, I've always maintained they're very cyberpunk looking and very futuristic, but he just sits perfectly at home in this build. Like, he does not look out of place. Everything in this build ties together so nicely. And I would kill a man to get a hand on those little green glass balls that I've got to guess are like 3D printed, because I have not seen them anywhere else. An absolutely fantastic entry by Dylan Murray here. Like, everything's tied together really well. The holographic display on the front windscreen, absolutely perfect. I wouldn't change any part of that. I think the only thing it needs, if it needs anything at all, would be just like an insignia or something on the side, or maybe on the front. Like, it just feels a bit too minimalist. But at this point we're pulling it at frayed edges. This is a watertight entry. So, like, man, this is a really good one. Well done, Dylan. That's as entries go. Blazing hot. Now let's look at last month's winner, Frank Saucian. Frank Saucian. Frank, how do you pronounce your last name? Everyone who has weird first and last names, how do you pronounce it? Like, I need phonetics. Is it Saucian? Saucian? I don't know. I need help. Frank Saucian with this absolute beast of an entry. Now, I find dioramas, they're either going to help highlight the positives of the build, or they're going to draw attention away from the build. And in this case, I love your entry, but the eye is drawn to the building and the people and the big display screen that must be like a mobile phone or something, because that's really cool how you can have different graphics on there. Because, like, these people have such personality, and there's this murder investigation unfolding before our very eyes, but the car feels second place to that, and I feel it's a bit of a shame. So that if you had some pictures of the car just by itself, fantastic. I'd love to see those. But as part of this diorama, it fits so well into it, it vanishes into it. Which sounds a bit strange, because you're like, how can you not admire the build? Well, there's so much going on. I find myself drawn away, which is such a shame, because you've done some like amazing tricks here, like with the serial numbers on that one panel by the driver's side door. Oh, so good. And it is like a proper six-wheeler as well. This is a big beast of a vehicle, so I want to see more of it. But my eye is drawn away. Then we have Gareth Powell's entry, who, due to having emergency eye surgery, had to rush the paint job on this. Now, I want to say this. Hopefully, Gareth, everything's all right. But let's just take a look at what he did. Heavily inspired by Tron Legacy, and I think we can all agree that that is very apparent, and it works very well. The energy lines, as I've said previously, it can be really hit and miss. If you're trying to get a bit of the glow effect going, fantastic. But if you were just trying to get crisp, clean lines, man, it's such a hard one. I know it's really difficult. Now, it does come back to another issue I've had in the past. Is this a 3D printed car? Because I can see the layer lines on the front windscreen that lead me to believe that it is. But at the same time, this is such a cool futuristic car, I wouldn't put it past Hot Wheel or Matchbox to actually produce this. So, everyone in the comments down below, tell me what you think. I mean, he's 3D printed some parts of this, there's no doubt about it. But how much of this has been created by the machine? Regardless, fantastic paint job, absolutely spot on. It fits that Tron look to a T, but there are some elements that I think need polishing up a little bit. But considering you were going to have laser eye surgery the next day, I think that's fair enough. We won't hold it against you. Then we have Ian Barham with his cyberpunk flying media car reporting live as a gigantic arthropod attacks the city. Yeah, once I saw the giant praying mantis, I knew that this would be one to get excited for. Now, I have the same issue with this as I have with Frank Saucy's, where I absolutely love the work you've done on this diorama, but does it distract too much from the entry? And I think in this case, again, it does. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. You've made an amazing diorama, and I think this is absolutely spot on for a praying mantis attacking a city. However, I want to see more of the car, and I think if you just applied like a bit of highlighting or something to the body, or just touched up that metal around the mid-engine a bit more, it might have the effect, the look you were going for might have come through a bit more. Then we have Jacob Harris and his entry, which is a very sleek looking hover car. And this is a good example where the diorama background, that setting that just drops it straight into the world, isn't overpowering the build. The build itself is the centre of attention, and the background is just a suitable setting to see it in. You know, this build overall works really well. I think the attention to getting those mud splatter effects on there, and using the tops of pens to create the engines, the turbines that are lifting it up, that works really well. Moving on, we have James Featherston and his entry, the DRS X1, DRS standing for Derbyshire Resurrection Services. They pride themselves on being able to get any machine up and running again. And what can I say? This is a real rat rod of the future, because you've got that combination of old and new, of sort of a classic bodywork, but it's been dug up in a barn in the year 2077. So they've used modern engineering to turn it into a real drag rod of the future. If the green is meant to be glowing, I'd love to see a bit of OSL, a bit of highlighting around it to show the light kind of reflecting off its nearby surfaces, but I know that it's a difficult trick to pull off, so that's fair enough. But I tell you what I find this really asks for, is just to have like a passenger or a little figure stood next to it, so you get that appreciation of the scale. Because I know for some people having figures and drivers and things is like verboten, it's forbidden. But I think that would really help this shine through. Then we have Jay Conklin with the Take No Prisoners Unit 50 of the New York Cyber Police Department. What can I say? The punks of the Wasteland had never seen anything like this before, and to be fair, now neither have I. I mean, this is a real classic kind of police interceptor hover car of the meanest of mean mega cities. It has a real solid Minority Report feel to it. Like it's like something straight out of a Tom Cruise movie. There's something about having that super narrow white nose cone with the NYCPD lettering on there that just gives it such an aggressive look. Like this thing has not come to play, it's come to put down criminals and move on. And then that effect is only emphasized more when the black light comes on and you see the crosshairs in its sight. Like, man, it's so ferocious in that regard. And I think that is just spot on, nails the look for this month. Then we have Jean-Christian Mathieu with an absolutely alien build with glow sticks. I think it's safe to say in the history of this game, like in the last 4 years, I don't think anyone else has tried using glow sticks in a build before. This is definitely a new one by me, and it really reminds me of from when we did the weird and wacky Wasteland machines, when we had the teleportation vehicle. I thought that it's got real strong emphasis. I think it's the ball tires that do it. Which, are they just unpainted marbles? Did you just stick marbles to your car? What can I say? It brings a smile to everyone's face who sees it. This is a great build, Jean-Christian. Yeah, the lights that you put in as well, I think, help. And I would love to see this without the glow sticks, but I get the feeling they're integral to it. If you take them off, it just wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have the same feel. And orange and green is such a strange combination to go for as well, paint scheme wise. But then when you see it lit up at night, it's almost entirely green, which is really cool. So yeah, a solid entry, but very strange, very unusual. Then we have Joe Hickles with his classic take on a Ferrari. The use of gems as hubcaps, but then painting the tyres to look like energy lines. Spot on. Absolutely spot on. And there's something really nice about, the use of different bits on the outside of the vehicle rather than trying to make it all hidden under the hood. I'd say in terms of personal progression, you've really come a long way with this. Like, I like the use of highlighting and trying to get those fine lines in key areas, as well as dirtying it up, because I think so far this is one of the few entrants that has cottoned onto the fact that this is still a wasteland. It's still the apocalypse. Cars should still have a bit of dirt and a bit of grime to them. So yeah, I really like it. Well done, Joe. Then we have Jonathan Baca with his entry, The Hellcat, driven by the newcomer Juliet Nakajima, under contract with Mcallen. Ruthless and tactical minded, she is working her way towards the bigger leagues and Mars. And it's a classic Bugatti Veyron. You don't need to be a car nut to look at that and be able to identify what it is. And it has some lovely Camsel design parts on there with the tyres and the big energy gun, as well as some Necrony bits coming out the sides. I think for me, this is a real tricky one, because this is very nicely executed. The paint, that lime green is very nicely applied, and the purple accents really work well against that. But what kills it for me, and I think this is something a lot of people struggle with, is trying to get those super crisp, super thin lines. And this is just one of those cases where if you don't feel that your hand could do it, just look at using like a fine tipped pen or something like that. You don't have to use a paintbrush for everything. There are ways to get these super thin, super crisp lines without going crazy in the process. And it's such a tricky one, because there are elements of this that work so well, but I'm drawn away from those elements because of that occasional bleed out on either side of it, of what should be a nice thin crisp line. But this is by no means a poor entry. This is absolutely fantastic. I think this goes without saying for everyone in this competition. You guys put out amazing cars every month. Everyone who enters and finishes is a winner in my books. When I talk about these cars, it's not my job to just sit here and go, that looks nice, that looks good, well done, well done. Part of this is giving you the criticism to help, focus yourselves further and push yourselves to that next level. So whenever I sound like I come off as just being like overly critical, it's because where you are right now is fantastic, but I want you to go that extra step further and raise the bar just that little bit higher. And I think this is one of those cases where your fundamentals are spot on, and you can do highlighting and shading with the best of them, and the actual work here is really good. But, and there is a but, and I just want to see you focus in on the areas that need improving. Like, if you take the back of this, those rear vents with the crisscross pattern, absolutely stunning transitions from pink to purple. Like, that is brilliant. I absolutely adore that. That is something that I know myself I would struggle with like buggery. It goes without saying. So the fact you're able to pull off the transition that cleanly, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But I'm not going to lie and say that my eye isn't then drawn to the grey areas on either side that have got that wibbly highlight that just needs just a little bit of fine tuning, and it would become something incredible. Like that bumper is stunning, and I get the feeling that was done with a different technique to how you try to do the body panels on either side. So the question is, can you recreate that effect? Can you then tighten this build up even further? And I think you can. And I can always admire a man who goes for the custom lettering, because lettering is never easy. Then we have Jonathan Horsham with his Cybertruck pickup truck. So this is a tricky one for me, because on the one hand, I think a lot of the issues that, say, Jonathan Baca had, I think are resolved in this one. Like, it's super clean. That purple is so, like, to die for. It's so rich and vibrant, and part of that comes from the use of blue in the cracks and crevices to really help emphasize that purple. Even just subconsciously, your eye picks up on it while you're looking at other areas. But at the same time, I'm seeing a pickup truck with some hover additions instead of wheels, some detailing in the back, and a gun turret on the front, and that's it. So it's a real double-edged sword of, on the one hand, beautifully painted, beautifully executed, but on the other hand, is this too simple? Does this need something more? Does this need a decal on one of the doors or body panels? Does this need a gang sign? Does this need something to help break up the purple? Because that is a fantastic body, but how do you take it to that next level? And I've said before, I'd love to see more dirt and dust on these builds, and I think in this case, absolutely, a bit of dirt and dust would not go amiss. The OSL glow light effect on the rear and on that energy cannon, just breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. There's not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that those things are throbbing with power. But it's going beyond that and going, well, some of these metallic areas, how do we break up that samey, metallic look? Maybe a bit of copper colouring in there in some areas, or a bit of a bronze look might help. The green cabling at the back works really well, but is that green too similar to the front windscreen? Maybe if they were yellow cables or white or red or something. It's a real tricky one. Now, you might be thinking, James, this is very critical. It's only because this is an absolutely fantastic build. And it's when you get the stunning builds like Jonathan Baca and Jonathan Horsham, you know that it's good. You don't need me to tell you that it's good. What you need is that push to take it further. And that's what I'm doing. That's the thing. I think you guys would appreciate that more. And if I'm wrong, tell me in the comments down below. Next we have Kilgore MJ's performance car, which, yeah, that is a very nicely detailed gold and teal. Well, it's a teal car with gold accents, isn't it? And I like the use of little figures to indicate this might be a police or almost like a hitman vehicle. And while there are a lot of elements of this that I think need touching up, I'd say overall the look and the feel is definitely there. I like how you've given attention to the interior, and you've tried to colour out the key elements like the seats and the main console, because a lot of that can be hidden and forgotten about, but I think addressing those is really good. I'd love to see more angles of this. With some of these entries, take more photos. Kilgore, you're killing me here. You submitted 2 photos. I want to see more of this. Take like 5 photos at least. Come on, my friend. Like, you've made this whole diorama, and now I've got 2 images to flip between to see it. But yeah, nice work overall, Kilgore. But more photos. I want to see more of this. Then we have Cororgan with his friendly Asian synth food truck, serving as a cover for the hacker known by the codename Jewel Core. Able to send surveillance drones to the 4 corners of the city, he is the perfect lookout for the cyber ghost network. What can I say? It's not very often we get food trucks and ice cream trucks in this competition, so I like to cherish them when they do come up. And I'd say Cororgan, this absolutely nails that look and feel. Like, there are elements of this that really scream that kind of neo-Japanese Tokyo feel, where on the one hand it's friendly and inviting and hey, come buy some food and sushi and noodles and hey, it's fantastic. But on the other hand, you know there's some shady business going on when the shutters come down. Like, I love the idea that one side the shutters have got bullet holes in because regardless of where this parks, you know that there's violence at some point. And the little drones that you made, I think those are really cool. I mean, in the game, you could use them as RC bomb cars and all sorts, but, you know, to use tyres and that repeated look, you know, it's really spot on, really helps tie these elements together. And of course, a lot of hand-painted neon, you know, the blues and the greens, they work really well. I think overall this is a spot-on approach to a food truck of a cyber city. So next we have Linus Nilsson and his entry that he did at the very last minute, like an absolute madman. I was convinced that he'd be submitting pictures at midnight, so the fact he was able to cut it as closely as he did is just breathtaking. And he's not given himself an easy challenge either, as he tried to recreate the hover taxi from Bruce Willis's Sixth Element film. So a very specific look to go for. And I think in some areas corners have been cut, like the checker patterning that you were trying to get on the hood. I feel that could have been worked a little bit more, but considering the amount of time, it's completely understandable. But this is what I'm talking about, having it rusty or a little bit dirty, but still fitting the world very nicely. This has got on the underside that wonderful orange patina of overuse and it's constantly being used 24/7, and it shows, the age of the vehicle shows. And it highlights how just because this is a cyberpunk build, it doesn't need to be perfectly clean. And I don't think anyone would argue that this isn't a cyberpunk build, because this fits very nicely into that world. So absolutely spot on work there, Linus, and I hope to see you in October's challenge as well. Then we have my personal favourite, Matrak. As you will all remember, last month I gave him the Wasteland seal of approval because I feel this man hasn't had enough recognition for his work. Continuing a trend that he set in the previous month of Japanese 80s inspired dark future design, we have this absolutely rock solid addition to his team. This car, K's, or Wind, or Breeze, is a really gorgeous Miyazaki performance car, and as you can see with its teammates, it just fits in so perfectly. I think there are some amazingly well executed elements to this build, because this isn't just a stock body that he's painted up nicely. There are a lot of modifications here that in some cases are so subtle you wouldn't even notice them. Like they completely fly under the radar. Like the addition of the air vents at the back and on the either side from a toy tank kit. Like it really is spot on. And part of it, when I look at this, part of it that makes me really like it is a lot of the issues that I can have with these builds can come from how clean they look. I've said this previously with his team cars. The cleanness here works in its favour. Now, I would still like to see a little, like some streaks of grease or oil or chipping or anything to really help tie it into this world. But I'd still say this is a rock solid entry. However, Massey, my friend, this is twice now we've seen you do a Miyazaki clean white build. We want to see you do other cars. You know, this is almost twice in a row. You had that gap with August's steampunk competition theme. These are absolutely gorgeous entries, but I know you can do other styles as well, and I want to see you do styles that aren't so crisp and clean. Like, I get the feeling if you ever did a really rusty build, I get the feeling it would be quite monotone orange. So I want, in the next challenge, I want you to prove me wrong. I want to see a real dirty, grungy, nasty, oily, multi-textured surface build. I want to see it like... I want to see you do a build where if I was to run my hand over it, I'd be able to feel the texture, the grittiness of that. And next we have Matthew B Gerrard with this absolutely outrageous, what I can only presume is a 5-wheeler, because it has the 2 rear wheels and it has the 2 front wheels, but then it seems to have a 5th wheel up front, which is not something you see every day. Now, when I talk about weathering and damaging your cyberpunk cars, this is what I'm talking about. These patches of rust are really nicely done, Matthew. And it doesn't take away from the futuristic look, it just helps add to the fact that this is an old but futuristic vehicle. And I really like that. You know, all the additions he's made here are really nicely done and executed. So this is what I'm talking about. I want you guys to take notes. Do things similar to this when it comes to the weathering and the dirtying up. Then we have Matt Andrews, one of the first to submit a finished entry this month. And what can I say? Neon lights in the wheels. It's an unusual take. I will say that. But a really, really nicely hand-painted, ghost face on the front there. I think that's really well done. And the dags. You gotta love dags. Keeping track of your kills. Yeah, a clean, efficient paint job helped by healthy application of LED lights. Very nicely done, Matt. Then we have Matt George with the Gibson Mark III, 6 DNA-seeking smart missiles and a central wetwork scrambler. A deluge of dystopian dread. Well, it certainly looks like it when you see it. I mean, that red and teal, oh my goodness, that is strong. And I've got to echo my sentiments to previous builds this month. Like, just a wash or just a little bit of shadowing in some of those recesses and this thing would really pop. But you're killing me, Matt. You're killing me because it so desperately needs that little bit of shading and you refuse to do it and it's like, Argh! But overall, a super futuristic build. I really like it. You look at this, there's no doubt where it belongs. Like this is fantastic. Then we have Matt Reeves with his cyberpunk Datsun 510, cut and hinged bonnet, green stuff engine, scratch built front spoiler and bars. What can I say? This is one heck of a project. And I like it. I like it. I mean, there's a lot going on here. And it is a nice break from the super enormous projects that Matt Reeves tends to put out. And again, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to a diorama. It's more of a presentation stage than it is a look at this, not at the car. This is the way you want to do it, if you choose to go that way. At the end of the day, the car is central stage in these builds. And in this case, what can I say, Matt? A vision of beauty, my friend. There we have Matt Weingust with this Miyazaki modded street racer. That engine looks like it's going to tear its way out the front of the car. It's that powerful. But I will say this is one of the first times I've seen someone try and do cambered wheels in this competition. And I think you've done a spot-on job. Because it's a very specific look. Because if it's too low, if it's too angular, it just looks like the car's been trod on. It just looks like it's been squished by a giant. So I'd say props to you for doing that, Matt. That looks really good. And the purple is absolutely divine. Then we have Michael Mersey with the Brutal Deluxe, which, again, a lot of hover cars this month. But I'll say this, the variety is just fantastic. I love it. Like, none of these hover cars, you look at them and go, oh, well, this one's just the same as this, or the same as this. I know that each one has its own personality. And this really strikes me as more of a frontline racer. Like, this thing just wants to pull out ahead and just blitz it across the racetrack. Very nicely done. I love whatever it is you've used to make those turbines, because that is a very strange angular piece. Very nicely done. And just the right amount of grime, I think. Yeah. Then we have Mcallen with the only other hover bike in this contest. Well, I don't know what it is with you guys. I want to see more hover bikes. They're really cool. Well, I want to see more bikes in general. Alright, so what are we talking about? We're looking at what looks like a futuristic Harley Davidson. You know, you've got the German World War II biker there, and he's absolutely loving it. I'm guessing this is a converted spaceship or something from some tabletop game, because it's not, those bits aren't anything I recognise. But with that red paint job and the flame pattern on the front, oh, fits in beautifully. Very nicely done. Just enough detail on the back there to show the MC markings. Then we have Nick Woodruff with this absolutely rusty raider of the cyber dystopia, and is the same base car used by Jacob Harris, which is quite interesting. So it's quite nice to see two completely different takes on the same base build. I love all the little modifications you've made, like the front engine. Is that made out of wheels? Is that made out of tyres? It really looks like it, but that's really cool. I'm going to have to remember that. You know, the using, I think, if I'm not mistaken, did you put white tape on to make the Go Faster stripes? Because if it's just white tape, that's a fantastic way to do it. Because you look at that in passing and you go, wow, those are some really nice straight lines. And more often than not, when people try and do these crystal, you know, sharp straight lines, if they can't do it with a brush, it can look a bit wibbly and a bit wobbly. So yeah, if you just use tape, there you go. Then we have Paul Barnes with From the Dregs of Cyber City 1, the Norton McAfee driven by Germ. Oh, what can I say? This is one wild car. Now, I'll say this for the rough and ready paint job, that you will get a lot of mileage out of this. That ain't going anywhere anytime soon, my friend. That is built to last. And I love the little highlights you put on those green pipes on the side. I think that's really good. A very, very heavily detailed build, and I think it works. Well done, Paul. Then we have another Paul with Paul Bowles, and this absolutely intense 3D printed modified build. So this is the thing with Paul, as we saw last month, he doesn't just take a standard car, stick some bits to it and call it a day. He actually custom designs bits to fit that base car model, which I can only imagine is just an uphill struggle. Like, I wouldn't even know where to begin with trying to figure that out, and the dimensions and the surfaces. Oh my goodness, it must be a nightmare. But it looks made to order. It looks fantastic. You know, it looks like something you could buy in a store because it's so designed for that base car. You know, I know Paul has done some modification kits inspired by his Car of the Month entries. So absolutely, keep doing what you're doing, my friend, because it is incredible. Like it's professional. It's professional grade modding there. But I'll say this. There are some panel lines where if you just had a bit of a wash around the wheel arches, you know I'm just pulling your chain. Well done, Paul. Speaking of Pauls, next we have Paul Chapman Moss and his Car of the Month entry, the Alpha Beta Corporation Outer District Patrol Vehicle. And at first I looked at this and I was like, has he just stuck a load of unpainted white plastic tubing all around his vehicle? Like, what is this like off-road rambler that I'm looking at? But then you see the glow-in-the-dark photos and you immediately get it. He's gone for a neon build, like so many people. He's gone for the neon, and it works, and it looks really good. I love the little energy lines that you've got going on the front windscreen, on the dash. Like, I think that's great. As you'd be driving around, you would have things projected in front of you. And the headlights work, and what can I say? It's really nicely done. As always, Paul Chapman Moss, another fine entry. Then we have Paul Costello, who thought he'd be submitting this at exactly midnight, but regardless, here it is, based on the Hot Wheels Diesel Boy, resculpted front end, new exhausts, driver, machine gun, ammo feed from the ammo box, jerry can, NOS canisters. My goodness, this thing's got it all. And when you see it, yeah, it is one hell of a beast of an entry. Fantastic detail on the driver, fantastic paint application, very smooth, very clean. But I'll say this, when it comes to the shadows, does it need a bit of a wash? I don't think so. But does it need a bit of dirtying up, a bit of dust? I think it does. But as always with these stunning entries, I'm pulling at frayed ends. Like you know that this is a rock solid entry. Like, very nicely executed. Well done, Paul. Then we have Peter Giles, or Peter Giles, with his entry, which is this just lethal looking racer. My goodness. I do like the front radiator mounted machine guns. I think they're really nice. Because that's the easiest trick in the book. Just take the barrel of the weapon, cut it off, and stick that to the car. And it gives the suggestion that it recedes back under the hood where all the mechanisms are. Very good for like stealth secret agent builds. And the rockets on the back, I think those are really lovely. I'm guessing they're from like an Airfix kit or something, because those look really good. And of course all the detail to the hood and that single crack in the front windscreen that shows that this is taking knocks and it's putting down enemies on the racetrack. Very nicely done, Peter. Then we have Quinn Allen's entry, another hover car, but this time more heavy duty, and I think it's safe to say more police. This is certainly a police interceptor in my books. Very clean, very nicely done. The hazard stripe markings especially are beautifully applied. I'm guessing those are a decal. If you've brush painted those, my god, teach me, because that is outrageously good. The modifications to the wheels just fit perfectly, along with that bright blue paint job. See, this is one of those cases where I think just a little bit of dust would help, but too much and it would just ruin the look. So very nicely done there, Quinn. Then we have your friend and mine, Ramon Sanjuan, with his interpretation of cyberpunk made mainly from scraps. And what can I say? This is an absolute beast of the Wasteland. I think if you've seen any of the new footage for Cyberpunk 2077, the parts of the game that look like they take place outside the big city, I think this is at home there, where it's clearly transporting wrecks between races. You know, it is futuristic and it is cyberpunk, but it's not your typical take on it, and I do like that. As a special mention, I just want to talk about Ricky Williams, who sadly was not able to finish, but I've got to say from what he was working on with that custom front end, it's looking good. And from everyone here in the Gaslands UK community, I hope you finish that build, Ricky, because it is looking spot on. Then we have Ryan Budd with his completed entry, first time using AK's neon paints. But you look at it and it's incredibly subtle. It's incredibly subtle. This isn't like some of the previous entries where you flash a black light on it and it just glows like the heart of a sun. Here it's more a case of the actual bodywork and the design, because that yellow nose up front, it's really evocative. The moment you see that on a car, you go, oh, it's going to be a flame pattern down the sides and across the bonnet. But here you've gone away from that and instead done a circuit board pattern, which is super cool. So I really like this look, Ryan Budd. I think you're onto an absolute winner with this circuit board hot rod markings. I do more of that because that is very nice, very nicely done. Then we have your friend and mine, Sebastian Debase, with his entry, which is currently sat on what looks like a fur rug. No, really nice teal and purple build here, Sebastian. And this is what I'm talking about, boys and girls, getting the washes into the panel lines and the cracks and crevices. Now, has it gone a bit dark with this? Maybe. I'd like to see some lighter, brighter purple highlights. The teal is really nice. I love that subdued colour. But I tell you what, that front windscreen, you've got all this acreage. You should really put something there, like a gang decal or like a holographic display or just something to help highlight that cyberpunk goodness. Then we have Simon Britton. This is his first time, so he's hoping that it's a legal build. But nothing says cyberpunk more than a badly rendered, glitchy wireframe hologram car. Now, I've talked before about making a car entirely out of paper clips. Simon, you have beaten me to it, my friend. I'd like to carve this into the stone now. You are the first man alive to make a car entirely out of paper clips for the game of Gaslands. I don't think there's another person on planet Earth that's tried this. I know I haven't, and I know some of the big players in the game haven't. So that feather in your cap, that goes to you, my friend. Absolutely love the concept. Really nicely applied. And I think the tricky thing, and I was looking at this myself when I was going to do a paperclip only build, it's how do you deal with the connections between the paperclips? Because just sticking them on the sides, that works, but then how are you meant to create corners and right angles and things like that? Yeah, I think you've done a good job. Then we have Steve Dowell's entry. A very nicely modded supercar here. All the additions are very subtle, and the attention is definitely drawn to that crisp, clean white paint job. Although I'll say this, if I was to make any changes to this, I think the minigun there on the side, I think that needs a bit more of a connection to the car itself. It's very much kind of dropped on the side there at the back. If it just had like an ammo feed or something, or like a mounting or something just to hold it in place, I think that would really help this build. But overall, a fantastic job, Steve. Then we have Tobias Hutton with his entry, driven by detectives Apollo and Baca, undercover from Neo Miami using their solar-charged electric Corvette. This I like. This is something brand new and original. This is a beautifully extended car, and man, you just don't see them like this. You do not see crazy mods like this, and it's the beauty of this competition that brings this out in the community, because that is one of a kind. I absolutely adore the paint job with that white to orange fade back to white with a little speckling of orange throughout. And then to top it off, those wonderfully futuristic blue solar panels just hiding underneath, along with the leopard or the tiger stripe, and oh my goodness, the detail on those wheels. You must tell me where you bought those, because those are fantastic. And the mohawks fit in beautifully, and the design just works to a T. Very nicely done, Tobias. If I could pick one, this is the one I would pick. Then we have Tony Eric Wallace's entry, an absolutely outlandish interceptor. I mean, this thing is covered in guns on the underside, as well as having very nicely detailed parts from model plane kits. And I think where this one would really shine is if some of that blue bodywork was painted on some of the panels leading up and over the front windscreen, that big mohawk looking area, because you look at the before photos and it's really nicely set up. You've got this brilliant setup. I just think you need a bit more paint, a bit of lightening, because it's very dark, but overall really nicely done, Tony. Then we have returning two-time heavyweight champion Tony Peacock making his way into the ring with yet another cyberpunk car. And what can I say? At least it's not purple. To be honest, I don't know where the whole Tony does purple cars things came from, because the very first time he ever won, back in January, it wasn't a purple car. I think he just had a long streak of doing only purple builds, but this, I think it's safe to say, breaks the streak, because this is very nicely detailed, lots of over the hood modifications, and what can I say, beautifully painted as always. Very nicely done, Tony. But if you want beautifully painted, oh my goodness, you need to look at Wayne Thompson's entry. My goodness, what a beast. Based on that speed racer car transport, this is enormous, absolutely enormous in size, and covered in LEDs and neon glow paint, and all of the references. There's a ridiculous amount of references in this build, and I love it. I think it's really nicely done. Then we have Zach Steiner with his entry, The Panther, a custom-modified V16 Interceptor piloted by Holly Havoc. What can I say? This is an absurdly cool build. I love the fact that the door opens on the side, popping out, and you can see Holly inside. I think the decals are really cool, and there's something about this being a previously owned police interceptor, while at the same time clearly having had heavy modifications over the years. Really nicely done. Really good. Although, epilepsy warning on the flashing lights. And finally we have Zippy Z Zoom. Yes, he put this into the competition twice because he decided to go back and repaint it. Now my partner said, the moment she glanced at this, she was like, he's done a Minecraft car. I think there is an element to that with just the right application of beige and greens and that pixelated look. Painting perfect squares can be such a difficult task, so absolutely credit to you, Zippy. This is a fantastic entry. What can I say? The Terrafin 2 rides triumphant. And that is everyone. That is all 50 entrants to this month. My God. You do not understand how long it takes to put this together. I'm recording this. I think this is the second day of recording, the third day of editing now. It takes so long to put a video this size together. So before we continue, before we announce the winners, I want to say one thing. To everyone that enters montage pictures of their cars, please do not enter montage pictures. I'd rather download 20 individual pictures than one picture that's got 5 images super glued together. It makes my life so much harder. So please, individual pictures, not montage collages. No collages, okay? Going forwards. Second point I want to make. I know a lot of people are worried about the high level of quality of the entries that we're seeing, but I want to highlight this. Regardless of if you make a team or a diorama, or if you feel like you're a beginner or a long-time veteran, none of that matters. At the end of the day, what matters is the car that you submit. It's what you're judged on. It's car of the month. Okay, guys? It's not team of the month. It's not diorama of the month. It's not who's been doing this the longest of the month. It's car of the month. So we've looked at enough pretty cars now. We've slogged through all 50 entrants. We are finally here. It is time to announce the winner of this month's Car of the Month competition. So, without further ado, start the drum roll, please. That's right, the winner for Gaslands UK Car of the Month competition for September 2020 is Dylan Murray. Yeah, that's right, Dylan Murray, come on down, see what you won. So, Dylan Murray, with your entry, the Hollowback Z, I think it's plain to everyone to see that this is a cyberpunk build. No one's going to wake up one morning, look at this and go, is this a steampunk entry? No, this is a cyberpunk car through and through. And as from the words of our sponsor, I feel it summarises the cyberpunk aesthetics perfectly. Sports car, hover, hood display, turret with some kind of corporate security officer, and a heavy machine gun. It is a perfect blend of everything that reminds us of the dark future we are all running towards. It is a stunning, aggressive build, and I absolutely love it myself. What can I say? This is a case where I think everything in this build comes together nicely. As I said, I could barely find fault with this. There are so many things just done and executed beautifully. Absolutely beautifully. So, Dylan Murray, congratulations for winning this month. A £30 gift voucher for Camsel Design's website is on its way to you right now as we speak. And to top it off, you now enter the Hall of Fame. That's right, we have had 9 months of competition so far. There are only 3 months left until the end of the year, and then the final reckoning of all winners will begin. But if Dylan Murray won first place, the question is who won second and who won third? Because we have gift vouchers of £20 and £10 left to give out. Well, I can announce to you right now, boys and girls, in second place we have, for this month, Jonathan Baca. That's right, Jonathan. Your entry, Hellcat, is just a beast to behold. As the sponsor said for this month, the semi-organic cabling, the fact that yellow can be such a pain in the ass to pull off, and you do it so perfectly, and that the cyberpunk aesthetics here, with an aggressive stance, low to the ground, sporting an enormous gun, why, besides the fact it uses the parts, I mean, it's a brilliant, brilliant entry. You know, as I said, I struggle to find fault with it. And finally, in third, we have not one, but two finalists for third place. So, first of all, we have Paul Bowles' entry, and from the words of our sponsor, the attention to detail for all of the custom 3D printed parts is astonishing. If the paint job was just a little cleaner, he could probably have come out on top. And then, in joint third place, we have Tobias Hutton's entry, which I think needs no explanation, truly unique. And as the sponsor said, the punk gang aesthetic with that open-topped sports car that seems to have been extended and transformed. Count me in. That is cyberpunk as all hell. And I could not agree more. Congratulations, Paul Bowles and Tobias Hutton. £10 gift vouchers to Camsel Designs websites are on their way to you as well. So, what a month. Not only did we have 50 entrants, but we also had 4 winners. And that is what it is all about, boys and girls. So, before we end the show, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who took part this month. As always, I do not envy the judges trying to pick through and decide who is the winner in this case. As I have said before, it is car of the month, not diorama, not team, it is car of the month. And I hope going into October that we see some absolutely incredible builds. But always remember, for finishing this challenge, you are all winners in my eyes. And as one month ends, another begins. So get ready, boys and girls, because October is round the corner. And I will see you all in a spooky car of the month competition for October 2020. Thank you, Wasteland, and I will see you all in the next episode. Bye-bye. So I'm here with my father. This is actually my dad.
Hello.
And you used to work in the clay modelling industry, didn't you?
The automotive design industry.
Automotive design industry.
Well, I paid my debt to society. I put it all behind me, and I'm on the straight and narrow now.
So worked for Jaguar, Land Rover, Volkswagen,
Porsche, Opel,
Porsche.
Lotus.
There you go. So you know a little bit about cars.
The usual.
It's safe to say.
A tiny bit about.
Tiny bit about cars.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we're going to look at, so this is context, it's the 16th of September, so we're halfway through the competition. It's not actually ended yet. We're going to look at some of the entries and some of the finished ones that have been submitted now, and we'll have an actual professional tell us his opinion of what everyone's done. So there you go, let's have a look. So what we got? We got Matt Andrews to start us off with what looks like a Porsche. Covered in LEDs.
That's right. Well, I think it's a very nice futuristic Porsche with quite steroidal, quite pumped up.
It is. The big question I have. Okay, yes. So I'm trying to do this with one hand. It's a lovely tyres, but is that actually a raw plug that he's stuck to the side of his car?
I think that's a Plas plug, yeah.
A Plas plug. For a
plasma
screw.
Cutting Plas plug, yeah.
It's stuck on the side of the car.
I think it's right, actually. You could see that stealing along the boulevards of Los Angeles in the middle of the night. Night Rider. It's got all the illumination of your dreams, really.
I know. It's the little LED wheels that do it for me.
I think it's fantastic. Yeah.
So there you go. So a very, very nice, very solid entry there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Because there's something, a lot of people are trying to do these gimmicky builds with LEDs everywhere, and you know sometimes it looks really good, sometimes it looks a bit naff. I think that's done pretty well.
I think you have to read what car it's based on as well. That's the thing. I mean, with a lot of sort of Gasland conversions, they're absolutely amazing. But you think, is it a 2CV or Is it an old VW bug?
Yeah, what am I looking at? Because the actual
what's going on?
the base car can get hidden.
And that can give you a sort of inkling as to how powerful it would be if it was spurting along. You know, a 2CV wouldn't be going that fast, whereas a souped-up Beetle would be. You know? So it's quite an interesting concept. Yeah.
So that's a good one, Matt Andrew.
Porsche goes like off a shovel.
Let's have a look at another one. Let's see what else we got. Okay, all right. So this is Peter Giles with a Aston Martin Vulcan. So this is the base Hot Wheels model that, as you can see, started 8th of September 2020. And here it is all finished up. So,
looking rather odd, very Japanese, and very oriental, very.
It's that sort of graffiti effect that it's gotten for.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it needs a bit of touching up.
You can see the sort of drift accent there, where it would be throwing itself into a corner at high speed, but I'd like to see a few more guns. A few more guns.
It's got plenty. It's got the two coming out of the radiator.
And spiky bits. More spiky bits.
Spiky bits and rust tend to be my go-to.
Yes, I love rust. Yeah.
You get
In rust we trust.
In rust we trust. You get a lot of people. They'll make cars for Gaslands and they'll do these beautiful, clean builds, but then they don't want to dirty it. They don't want to. But at the end of the day, these games, they're in the desert, they're in destroyed apocalyptic cities. So yeah, they would be a fine patterner. Wouldn't go amiss.
If there was a criticism, and there isn't really. I mean, this is picking fly. where he's marked out the A post on the top of the screen.
Yeah,
I would use perhaps a gel pen. A silver gel
pen
or something like that, because it's a little bit feathered. Works great on the other graphics, but where you want something pin sharp like that, because it's quite a sleek car, I would have just used something that's really delineated. You know,
one of the oldest tricks in the book is just, if you don't think you can do it with a paintbrush, just use a pen.
Use a pen.
It can be as easy as that.
The gel pens, you can get them in silver, you can get them in gold.
Because you can see what he's gone for. Because
it looks really good
on the actual Hot Wheels car. You can see that's... Oh no, that is actually textured. There is actually a groove already in there.
That's right.
So yeah, you use a gel pen, just follow along that crease. It worked fine.
Great.
But there you go. That's another. And this is 2 weeks in. People are already finishing up their builds, which is just insane. So
Back
to look at Gaslands UK Car of the Month for July 2020.
Coming to you live here from the Flamingo Lounge, Las Vegas, Nevada.
The sunny favelas of Nuneaton. I should have like an orange tint
in
over
the superior part of Britain, the Midlands.
The Midlands. Beating heart of the country. No one likes. No one remembers. Everyone drives straight past.
It's true.
Right, so looking at the sports car one, because I think this would be quite good.
Yeah.
Starting with Chris John with Star Driver Pharaoh, which was quite a strange one, because it's from that sort of very like rocket age sort of era of car design that Hot Wheels had going on for a bit. So it's all about the paint job there. But
beautifully graphic, I'd say, beautifully graphic, and I love the checkered graphic is fantastic. Actually, it looks really nice, and that gives it a real sort of retro feel as well. I particularly like the jet thruster things as well. They're quite nice. But very, very Hot Wheels, very, very in keeping with the tradition of what Hot Wheels is all about.
The next one, this one, okay, Gabriel Frost's car here. Okay, this is your more classic sort of sports car in the Wasteland, stick a gun on it, based off of a Lamborghini or Porsche or something. But it is quite nice when we do see more images of it. You can see he's even tried adding some little air intake vents on the side and plastic art, which is very good. That
makes it a lot more aggressive. One of the problems with classic sports cars, particularly Italian sports cars, is they can be quite feminine, because these are beautiful, she has wonderful lines. But when you put them in a Gaslands context, they become quite aggressive monsters, and a lot more attractive, a lot more
macho. Is that?
Yeah,
the
macho.
machismo goes through the roof all of a sudden.
They appear to be able to really move and take on any terrain, and that's what I really like about the whole Gaslands thing. Nothing will stop these vehicles, which is wonderful.
There's
what you would say about a Vauxhall Corsa.
Well, no. There's a big, when it comes to, if I do more like that, there you go. There's a big element of raising the car profile off the ground. You see a lot in the Mad Max films, because more often than not, these sports cars, they are designed to be flat to the road, with like millimetres of air between the body and the floor. But
I've discussed this for years with people. There is a very fine line between sports car, which is very low to the ground, and dodgem car, which is also very low to the ground, or skateboard, or roller skate. And the problem with sports cars is you have to kneel down to get into them. And in Gaslands you want something that you have to stand on a box to get into.
You jump inside of and then just start fighting.
Perhaps impale yourself on something sharp as you get in. You
try to get into your own car.
That's quite marvellous. Yes.
Yes. When we get to Maciej Matrak, as a personal favourite of mine from Poland, didn't you know? Good old Maciej Matrak with Kinko, which is Japanese for something or other.
Yes.
But yeah, absolutely beautifully done bone white car that he painted, and white can be a real sucker to paint. Like it's such a difficult thing to get if it's so clean.
Makes everything look bigger as well if something's white. But I love the yin and yang. It's quite interesting, the graphic. I mean, if I had a criticism, and it's not really, it's really not a criticism, there is a kind of manga thing going on there. And if you're not into manga, it might cheapen the whole project. But I'm into manga, so I like to see it.
Yeah.
Particularly around the windscreen, the delineation between the windscreen and the body is very, very manga, which I think is obviously the essence of Japanese design.
Well, that's the big one right there, because you can see in this image you've got that police interceptor next to it, which looks really nice. But they do almost look separate. Like it's so clean and it's so cell shaded and graphic, it almost looks like it doesn't quite belong next to that, because it is so clean. But it's one of those, I say to people, just a little bit of dirt or a scratch or rust or any combat damage, and it'll fit right in like a charm.
Yeah, just a little rust texture, perhaps some streaks of dirt across the screen or something like that.
You get like a
tires.
single blood splat or something, and the whole thing just comes together. Get a bullet hole.
It'd be quite interesting to have a Norwegian theme, actually. Because in Norway they've got such a very high suicide rate, and there'd be very cars to kill yourself in.
With the suicide doors.
Suicide doors on
the side.
Ejector seats for the DB5 retro people.
So here we are, looking at Matt Reeves. This takes an actual Games Workshop Dark Future, which was their Mad Max tabletop game. It takes one of those cars they made for that and sort of brings it into the modern age by updating the paint job and all this. But the one thing that gets me is, has he gone a bit mad with the decals? Has he gone a bit too...
He has gone a little crazy, but this really, really reminds me of Daniel Simon's races. If you're aware of Daniel Simon, he did some very futuristic racing cars, and it kind of looks like that, because the sort of, there is a lot to look at with the decals, but these things take on a life of their own after a while, and the more you look at it, the more you get into it. And the roll cage around the front, and those fantastic pods with the cannons coming out. I think that's fantastic, with the checker tape around them or whatever. It's wonderful. I think it really works.
The orange and white is always such a good combo, but then you've got the blue interior, because teal and orange is all the range, and always will be.
That's right.
But there's always something nice about seeing one of those classic cars being brought into the modern era. But I talk about this when it comes to Dead Reckoning. You got to have some clear surfaces, and he's really covered like nearly every bit of it with a rivet or a decal or just something.
It'd be kind of interesting to get a UV light.
Hey, we can take some tablets now.
Alright. So if you're in a darkened room in a UV
with
light,
a UV light or a black light as they're known sometimes, the white would really ignite, and it'd be very interesting because you would be able to read. It would add a new dimension to the decals, because the whiteness sort of bleaches through. That'd be quite interesting, actually. Cars to look at in the dark. Oh God! Bring back luminous paint. Where is luminous paint?
There is luminous paint. All right, so last one now, just before we have to say goodbye, children. We are dealing with the winner from last month, Tony Peacock, with his Lamborghini Diablo, which he did in a cyberpunk style, which is this month's theme. So I thought it'd be quite interesting just to look at that and sort of see what kind of ideas people might carry over into this month, or you name it.
I think one of the most amazing things about this is the beautiful dry brushing. I love that. I love the dry brushing. I love the checker plate. And there's the tiny little bits of texture that make it look so real. But I think it's quite techno. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of this sort of suggestion of under the hood modification with all these wires and cables. And you look at the dogged state of the car that he had to work with.
That's great.
It came from that. Missing like 3 wheels.
It came from the canal.
and then he turns it into this wonderfully painted, finished piece, and that's what it's all about.
The gardens of Britain, 2 inches underneath the lawn, will have toys that have been implanted there in 1965
by children.
Dig them out. Let's look at them now.
See the state of them now.
Yeah, absolutely marvellous. No, I think but it's beautiful dry brushing. Beautifully done. I love the detailing on the front bodies as well. I think that's quite nice. Those 2 almost worm-like
cables. And,
that's right. It'd be nice to see some copper wire somewhere, wouldn't it? Some raw electrical copper wire.
This is kind of getting into the other side of the spectrum. When we look at Matt Reeves, it's just covered in decals and details and stuff, and you can't. The body of the car doesn't quite breathe. This is the other end where it's so minimalist. It's there's so little on there that's been added after the fact. It's like, well, how do you? What could you add to make it different, to improve it, as it were?
Well, one of the things from the original model before it was altered in any way or customised is the fact that it's so covered in these sinewy, cobwebby type texture, and I would like to see that dry brushed on. That would be quite nice down so ivy or something like that. I think there's such a lot going on, and I think it's a mid-engine car, isn't it? So it's
Lamborghini.
Was it rear engine?
It's rear engine, isn't it?
So you've got a lot of aspiration there. There's a lot of air got to be sucked in to cool the engine, and I think you could have funnels and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, the next level for chimneys, this would be to take these vents at the back and just put like a thin line of black paint across it to really indicate that there's an intake there.
Draw your eye to it.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
But it's all about the sort of the classic bodies of the cars at the end of the day. But yeah, so that brings us to the end of our introspective works. This big sweaty red bit now on the floor. It's horrendous. It's just So yes, thank you for having a look at these with me, Father.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to experience some of the wonderful wealth of inventive creation that's
creative
going on
types that we have.
The Gaslands community, which I think is a very, very healthy place to be.
Yeah.
I think it's good that people are just making things. They're not just for phones, Make stuff, it's fantastic. And in the future, people will look at these in 30 years' time and think, wow, did I really make that? Or, wow, where did that come from? And you could see this would be the way that car design would go, because people are getting quite tired of the blandness. And it's certainly not bland.
I think there's a huge community of people into this now, but I think it's only going to grow because it's so accessible and it's so easy and it's not. There aren't rules set in place regarding this yet.
No. Well, that's right. It's very adventurous. Adventure modelling. It's marvellous. And there's a fantasy element as well running through it. And I'm sure that people see themselves driving these vehicles.
Oh yeah.
Wow, this would be great. Yeah, wonderful. Very good.
Yeah. It's a whole different take on the car modelling thing. Because
right.
if you think about all the modelling you did back in the day, I know you did it was like a Mercedes or something that you stretched out, or like a Mini that you stretched out the scale model of. But like when it comes to car design, it's all quarter scale, full scale. Like, there's none of this. There's no toys in big industry car design at Ford, at General Motors. Mess around with toys, but
you say that, but Richard Rawlings with Fast and Loud, they have done a full-size Hot Wheels car.
They have.
In fact, they've done 2 full-size Hot Wheels cars at West Coast Customs, another digital show that is made in America. They have done stuff that's been really inspired by Hot Wheels. I think the sort of over-pumped steroid car has got. It's best to stay away from electric. Leave the electric alone.